Oh, Gabriel Gampala, you are not going to fail this test. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here and we are live. If you have questions that you want to ask, by all means, let me have it. Let me know if you can't hear or there's a problem with the audio. I'm not sure what peanut putter means, but okay. How's it going? What can I help you with? What happened to Mooey? Listen, Dr. Wubbelkins, I am seriously thinking about kicking you off the chat. Continental System, British Orders and Council. Think Napoleonic Wars. The British and French are trying to blockade each other. So Napoleon had his Continental System to freeze the British out economically. The British had their Orders and Council. Both the Continental System and the Orders and Council made it very difficult for America to trade with the European continent, whether you're talking Britain or France. So you could say that the Orders and Council Continental System were a cause of America's difficulty staying neutral during the war, and you could say it's a cause of the impressment problem. What effect did Joe have on the elastic clause? Okay. The forces that caused the Constitutional Convention to convene. I think there are really four. The rampant inflation that is going on in the new American states because the Articles of Confederation government couldn't compel states to settle on one currency. Hyperinflation, I think we talked, the worst offender here is Rhode Island. Inflation is one cause. Trade imbalance with Britain. Britain flooding the new American states with manufactured goods at low cost. Situation cried out for a tariff. We're not going to get a tariff because the 13 states can't agree. Add to that Shays Rebellion, which makes a lot of the well-bred, well-fed, well-read nervous because now the mob appears to be in control and the government can't keep law and order. I would also say fourth cause is the British on the frontier and the Articles government having the inability to kick them off. Those four things very much show the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, although Shays Rebellion is kind of the catalyst there. Republican influence on American culture. I think one of the things we talked about in class was that post-revolution, there is a unique and distinct American culture that pops up in art. Think about the portraits of the founding fathers, Washington crossing the Delaware. Literature, the setting of novels and different works tends to take on American settings and American themes. Noah Webster's dictionary, a unique American spin on the English language. Education, Thomas Jefferson beating the drum for a national public school system so that the future citizens of America would be literate and be able to discuss the issues of the day. So they would be good citizens of a democratic republic. Those are all ways in which we have a Republican or Democratic influence on American culture. You could add to that list Republican motherhood is part of that. How is assuming the debt a way of strengthening the economy? Whew. Okay, this is going to take a second, but think of it this way. If the national government buys up all of the state's Revolutionary War debt and then pays it off, they are sending a signal to the rest of the world that in America, bills are paid on time and in full. This would make foreign investors, rich Englishmen, Frenchmen, Europeans, who are looking for a way to make money, assuming the debt and paying it off sends a signal to those wealthy foreigners that if you're looking for a place to park your money, to make money, to invest your money, America is a good bet. It is not unlike a credit score. By the national government assuming the state debt and paying it off, the young United States are improving their credit score so that people will loan the American states, or more importantly, American businesses money, knowing that it's safe. What was William Henry Harrison's significance? Yeah, he's an Indian fighter who's going to become president later. Excuse me. How does the Haitian Revolution impact the Louisiana Purchase? I would say, to be honest, it just convinces France, because France can't put down the revolution. it convinces France that they can't hold on to their North American empire, and Napoleon decides to cut bait and sell Louisiana to Jefferson. Oh, main reasons why the Alien Sedition Acts were made and what were the effects. I think the Alien Sedition Acts are a direct cause of people like Citizen Genet, French revolutionaries who are in America, to whip up support for the French during their revolution and wars against the rest of Europe. George Washington wants to stay neutral, wants Citizen Genet to cease and desist, and instead, we get Genet going out trying to stir up trouble to get the people to rally to the French cause. And so the Federalists in Washington's cabinet, like Hamilton and Adams, are much more inclined to roll with a law like the Alien Sedition Acts. Adams will reluctantly sign it. Obviously, the big takeaway here is that the Democratic Republicans believe it is aimed directly at them. And so they will oppose the Alien Sedition Acts with the Virginia and Kentucky resolves. Okay, seriously, Dominic Bartel, easy on the yelling with your all caps. The Barbary pirates were pirates. Yes, Parker Salich, you are all over that. Dominic, they were pirates that were harassing American ships. Thomas Jefferson sends the Navy over there. It's one of the first examples of America using military force to protect our interests. We didn't mention them because they don't matter too much. Why did the XYZ affair anger Americans? Christiana, what if I asked you for a bribe just to sit down and talk about your test? And you would have to pay me money just to get me to sit down and talk about all the mistakes you made. XYZ affair, it's the French. They want $250,000 or some absurd sum of money simply to discuss ending the harassment of American ships in the Atlantic. This obviously infuriates the Americans. They're trying to blackmail us. They're trying to extort us. And when Adams goes public, the American people want war. We're not going to get one, but the XYZ affair puts bad taste in Americans' mouth toward the French revolutionaries. What follows will be the Quasi-War. Oh, good job, pirates from the Barbary states. I think the XYZ affair kind of leads us into the Quasi-War, because by refusing to pay the bribe to negotiate with the French, we are going to have problems with the French until eventually the revolutionary government is willing to leave American ships alone. Already talked about Noah Webster. Oh, Mahi Shah. John Marshall's ruling is significant. Everybody from Ignati's classes should be able to say judicial review. Hey, good job, Charlotte Pavlik. That is well played. Significance of the French Revolution. Parker, to be honest with you, when I think about the French Revolution, it impacts the United States. Think about all the different foreign policy problems we will have thanks to the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars that follow. You've got impressment, you've got Quasi-War, XYZ affair, Citizen Genet. They are all pieces of the French Revolution that filter across the Atlantic. Add to that the impressment with the Chesapeake Leopard affair, the Embargo Act, which ruins the American economy. These are all consequences of the French Revolution, Napoleonic Wars that embroil America because we are trying to trade with Europe. Why was Jay's Treaty hated so much? Because Americans thought we gave up too much to get Britain off the frontier when they were supposed to be off the frontier. That's why. We've already talked about Toussaint Louverture, Haitian Revolution, convincing Napoleon. Why was the election of 1800 referred to as the Revolution of 1800? Because you had a peaceful transition of power from one political party to the other. John Adams, the Federalist, hands over the reins to Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican, without bloodshed, without violence. It's a peaceful, orderly transition of power. Mr. Muir likes to say we have a revolution in America every 2 years because we elect people from potentially different parties to office, and there is no violence, bloodshed, or other shenanigans. And that's why they call it the Revolution of 1800. Do we need to know anything about people in Supreme Court? Quran, Marbury versus Madison. Come on, brother. Deism. Oh, deism. The idea that there is a God, but he is removed. He kind of created the world, and he kind of sits back and watches humans yuck it up. I think your knowledge of deism should know that many of the founding fathers believed in deism and believed that there was a God, he is remote, does not get involved much in human affairs, and consider the Second Great Awakening a backlash against both Enlightenment thinking and deism. To a Second Great Awakening follower, God is omnipresent and very much part of your own personal life. They would reject this concept of deism. William Henry Harrison, kind of been there. Good job. You guys are all. What exactly is the Quasi-War? Okay, I don't know who Quasi with a Z is. The Quasi-War was the weird, it's kind of a war, but kind of not, between the British, the French, and the Americans on the high seas in the years before the War of 1812. All right, good job on the Essex Junto. Why did the Hartford Convention lead to the death of the Federalist Party? Remember, in January of 1815, news breaks in Washington, D.C. that we won a great victory at the Battle of New Orleans, defeated a British army. At the same time, we get word from Ghent that a peace treaty has been signed. And so for most Americans, we believe that we have won a smashing victory over the British and we have won the War of 1812. Not long after, news comes down from Hartford, Connecticut that the Federalists have met and that they have agreed on some potential constitutional amendments that would limit the president's power to make war. You might recall that the Federalists believed that the War of 1812 was Mr. Madison's war. It was very bad for Federalist New England because of shipping. Anyway, the Federalists are talking about some constitutional amendments to limit the president's power. They also have a few hotheads in the Federalist Party that are talking about secession, that maybe they belong with Canada. Their interests more closely aligned with the British. Well, when news of the Hartford Convention hits Washington, D.C., on the heels of this smashing American victory, it very much appears like they are traitors, and their party will never recover. They are painted with the brush of treasonous talk, and their party will die out over the next few years. Okay. Battle of New Orleans, it's a great American victory. It helps people believe that we have won a great victory in the War of 1812. Significance of Chesapeake Leopard affair. Nobody names their warships the Leonard. The Chesapeake Leopard affair. Sorry, I got to crack up with that. The Chesapeake Leopard affair is a British warship that tries to stop the USS Chesapeake, an American warship, to see if there are any British sailors on board. Basically, the British warship wants to impress sailors onto its ship. When the American captain refuses, the Leopard opens fire and kills a number of American sailors. This is the cause of Jefferson's Embargo Act. Good job. Effect of the Second Great Awakening. I think right now our effect is this huge religious revival, backlash against the Enlightenment. But the biggest takeaway that we tried to talk about in class was an opportunity for women to step outside the home and work in something larger than just their family. And that will be a big deal in units to come. Battle of the Thames, Battle of Tippecanoe. They are not both Tecumseh versus William Henry Harrison. Battle of the Thames is Tecumseh versus Harrison. Battle of Tippecanoe is William Henry Harrison, but Tecumseh is not there. Bottom line is, what you need to remember, Battle of the Thames crushes Tecumseh's Confederacy. Battle of Horseshoe Bend crushes the Creek Nation down south. Both those battles together, they crush Indian power east of the Mississippi. Okay, deism is one of those events that leads to the Second Great Awakening. The other is a backlash against the Enlightenment. Better way to say the significance of the Constitutional Convention than we got a new form of government. That's solid. I mean, could you say that the Constitutional Convention was caused by the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? The Constitutional Convention was caused by the disorder and chaos of Shays' Rebellion. Could you say that the Constitutional Convention led to a federal system with 3 co-equal branches and checks and balances? That's pretty solid. Hamilton's financial plan. Remember that Hamilton has a dream of a manufacturing and trading America. Hamilton wants to buy up all the war debt from the states and pay it off so that we are a good investment for foreign money. He wants a national bank, and he wants to use excise taxes and tariffs to pay for the cost of government. Oh, good stuff. Everything looks good. Significance of George Washington's farewell address. Avoid foreign entanglements, right? No treaties. Trade with everybody, treaty with none, and avoid political parties. They are the devil. I just talked about the significance of the Battle of Tippecanoe. John Adams, that's all good. It was very polite of you, giving it thanks. Nice work, Nashi. Main foreign policies during Adams and Jefferson's presidencies. I think for Adams especially, he wants to remain neutral. That's why we get the Alien Sedition Acts. That's why he refuses, doesn't go to war, despite the XYZ affair becoming public. Adams wants to follow George Washington's lead and stay neutral. I think for Thomas Jefferson, while he has a great deal of respect and admiration for the French revolutionaries, going to war, joining the French, means you're going to have to increase the size of the American military, and you're going to spend a great deal of money on a war with Britain, another war with Britain. And so if you think about if you think about Jefferson, I think he's trying to stay neutral as well with the Embargo Act, just to keep us from getting embroiled in foreign affairs. Marbury versus Madison, big takeaway, concept of judicial review. Supreme Court rules that the old Judiciary Act is unconstitutional, and Congress overstepped its bounds and sets up the Supreme Court as the check on the executive and legislative branches by being able to overrule those branches when they do something that is unconstitutional. Is there a difference between national government and federal government? I don't think for our purposes it's huge. A federal system is one where power is located both in the hands of the federal government and in the hands of the states. But typically in America, federal government and national government are pretty synonymous. Okay, hide that. Did Hamilton want to pay the debt to the original people with the higher values, or did he want to pay the debt for the people who bought the debt at a cheaper price? He wants to pay it at par, which I believe is face value. I would not get bogged down in how much debt Hamilton wants to pay. I think you should remember Hamilton wants to pay off the debt to signal foreign investors that America is a safe place for money. Why don't you stick with that? All right. Significance of Pinckney's Treaty. Gave the United States the right to use the Mississippi River, Port of New Orleans, which was a big deal for Western farmers. Easiest way to ship crops, goods, whiskey to market is downriver. And so Pinckney's Treaty, making sure we have access to the Mississippi River and New Orleans at its mouth, is a big deal. Let's see here. What did Jefferson do with Citizen Genet? I'm not sure he did anything. Citizen Genet is something we typically associate with Washington's presidency. I wouldn't worry about how long it took for Genet to get tossed out of the country. Extra credit. That's hilarious. Yes. There's no such thing as extra credit. It's a push. It's a push. We don't do extra credit. Get it right the first time. Jacob Richter, you are about to get bounced. Thanks for opening that can of worms. Extra credit. There is no extra credit. It is a joke. Thank you, Gabriel. Jacob Richter, you are a scam. Yes. Oh, let's see here. You are not dying. You're fine. Burr Conspiracy. Aaron Burr and General James Wilkerson are kicking around the idea of setting up like their own little nation out west, removing some of Louisiana Purchase. The bottom line is it's treasonous. It's why Aaron Burr gets arrested. It's treasonous talk, and it's not something we spend a lot of time talking about. right? Foreign policy issues that stem from the Napoleonic Wars. To be honest with you, gang, we've already talked about that. You can consider the French Revolution / Napoleonic Wars to be one big, long 25-year stretch of urban European turmoil. So when we talk Citizen Genet, when we talk impressment, when we talk Embargo Act, when we talk XYZ affair, Quasi-War, they all kind of stem from the same thing. Remember, the French Revolution kind of slowly morphs right into the Napoleonic Wars. It's about a 25-year stretch where the Europeans are constantly at each other's throats. So I would suggest to you that all the foreign policy issues, from Citizen Genet all the way through the Rush-Bigot Treaty, they all in some way are caused by the French Revolution / Napoleonic Wars. Okay. Talked about Hartford Convention, concept of nullification. That's very good about Virginia, Kentucky resolves. I like it. We did talk about the Continental System, British Orders and Council right at the very beginning of the stream, so feel free to go back and look at that. Necessary and proper clause. This is part of the debate. Should the government do only what's necessary, or should the government do what's proper? I think your anti-federalists would say the government can only do what is necessary. But people like federalists who are behind the national bank, if you're going to tax, if you're going to have tariffs, you got to have a place for the government to park its money. It's only proper that the government have a national bank. Tippecanoe is not a battle we spent a long time with. It is part of the Indian Wars between the early American Republic and Native Americans. Tippecanoe happens a number of years before the War of 1812, but it does show that we've got problems on the frontier. The British are helping the Indians out, and the Indians are not going quietly into that good night. What is the Continental System? We've been there. Tecumseh wants a confederacy of native tribes to stop white expansion into the Ohio River Valley. That's why he is trying to get all the tribes together to resist white encroachment. Way back at the beginning, we talked about the Republican influence on education. Mostly we're talking about a public school system. I would encourage you to rewind. Rage against the dying of the light. That's an outstanding catch. Good for you. Can you explain Macon's bill? I want to say Macon's bill number 10 is going to end the strictures of the Non-Intercourse Act. Don't sweat Macon's bill right now, all right? What exactly does British on the frontier mean? It means the British never left American soil at the end of the Revolution. They are still hanging out in places like Fort Detroit and Fort Mackinac, and they never left because they say they don't have to leave until we pay off all the debt that we owe to loyalists and British companies who got their property confiscated during the Revolutionary War. It literally means the British are on the frontier. I'm shaking with rage. When did impressment start? Who is president? I think impressment starts as soon as the British and French are going to war during the years of the French Revolution, because the British will constantly have trouble finding enough sailors to man their navy. Major themes of Jeffersonian democracy. Love it. I think Thomas Jefferson wants a weaker central government. He wants a government that doesn't go into debt and that is very frugal. That means good with its money. He wants a weak military to avoid the temptations of tyranny. He very much is looking out for his ideal American, who is that small-time independent farmer. Sometimes we call them the yeoman farmer. Jefferson does not go out of his way to make enemies of the Federalists. He does try to get along well with Congress, and that would include the Federalists in Congress. I think Jefferson also brings an air of humility to the presidency. We talked a little bit about pell-mell, the idea when you go to Jefferson's White House, there's no formality, there's no special ceremonies. Jefferson gets his own door. When you knock, he's probably going to answer. But they're very much, if you think about what the anti-federalists are worried about, tyranny at the hands of strong central government, Jefferson's very much going to move in the opposite direction. The one kind of unique thing about Jefferson's presidency is that he keeps all of Hamilton's financial institutions in place, like the National Bank, like the tariffs, because they work. How do the Alien and Sedition Acts affect the Republican Party? The Alien and Sedition Acts caused the Democratic Republicans to write the Virginia and Kentucky Resolves. Who was angry when Jefferson made the purchase because he was strict constitutionalist? The Federalists were, because now Thomas Jefferson seems like a massive hypocrite. Non-Intercourse Act. This is James Madison's tweak to the Embargo Act. The Embargo Act really, really, really hurt the American economy, caused a massive depression. Non-Intercourse Act said we could trade with the world except for Britain and France. Okay. Why did Burr change parties? Please kick him. Burr? That's well, seems hard to do and mean. Who are the Barbary pirates? Yar. Mediterranean pirates holding American ships hostage for ransom. Jefferson sent the Navy over there. It's the first time we were going to send the military abroad to advance American interests. Please do not spend much time on the Barbary pirates. We already talked about the Federalist Party dying after the Hartford Convention. Harrison's land law, don't sweat it. The effect of the Three-Fifths Compromise. You know, there isn't that much of, I mean, like, the effect. Three-Fifths Compromise, slaves are counted as three-fifths of a person for representation purposes. In theory, the South gets increased representation, and the North would be able, what North gets out of the compromise is the ability to tax slaves at the rate of three-fifths of a person if there is ever a tax based on population. In fact, the federal government does not levy taxes based on population. We really never have. So in terms of the Three-Fifths Compromise, in reality, the South makes out on this one because what the North was supposed to receive in the compromise, the ability to tax slaves, never really takes place. All right. Louisiana was originally pronounced without the S. Thank you. How did the National Bank work? It's a bank. It is, forgive me, literally a bank. It is a bank where you could go and deposit your money. It's a bank where you could go and take out a loan, but it is also a bank where the federal government keeps its funds. And in later units, we will talk about how the bank works and how it impacts the American economy. I think for Unit 3, what you really want to remember about the National Bank, it is the start of the big divide between the Federalists and the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. This is the great debate over strict versus loose interpretation of the Constitution, and I think that's your big takeaway. Well, Alien Sedition Acts, it's a way to get people to not talk about the government. How come Adams thought it was a way to stay neutral? I think what Adams is thinking is anybody who is stirring up trouble in America and demanding that we side with the British or side with the French can be silenced. And we could just go on about our business without rabble-rousers, like a Citizen Genet, stirring up trouble. That's how I think Adams thinks it will keep America neutral. Warhawks, Western Congress critters like Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun. The Warhawks are expansionists. They want to go to war with Britain in 1812 because they see Canada as like the 16th state, and it would be amazing. Can you go over the main events of the War of 1812? Main events. I'm not sure there are any. Remember, we don't do wars. We do the causes of the war, which are impressment and Tecumseh on the frontier, supplied by the British, and the Warhawks. Those are big figures. Those three things are the causes of the war. In terms of battles, really don't have much to say. There is the Battle of the Thames that crushes Tecumseh's Confederacy. There is the Battle of Horseshoe Bend that crushes the Creeks. And there's the Battle of New Orleans, which, when combined with the Treaty of Ghent, seems like a great American victory in the war. But as far as the war goes, don't waste your time on it. Who is Joe? Not sure. You guys are all over the Rush-Bagot Treaty. We've already talked about Burr Conspiracy. Don't sweat it. Did Spain give up trying to stop Jackson from crossing the border, chasing people, so they just gave up and decide to sell Florida? Kinda. Spain is the sick old man of Europe. They are also, at this point, kind of dominated by Napoleon's French Empire. I think Napoleon's brother-in-law is sitting on the throne in Spain. So as years go by, yes, the Spanish are just going to give up. When you speak of British on the frontier, what is the frontier? It's the place where there aren't a lot of settlements. Think Kentucky, Tennessee, what is now Illinois and Indiana, Michigan. That's the frontier. When do we stop saying anti-federalists and start saying Democratic Republicans? Are they even the same group of people? That's a lot of question marks, Hadi. I would say when the Constitution is ratified, they're going to brand themselves. They're going to listen. You call yourself an anti-federalist. What do you stand for? All you are is an anti-federalist. You call yourself a Democratic Republican, then you tell people just with your name, your brand, exactly what you stand for: a Democratic Republic. So after the Constitutional Convention, these issues over strict versus loose interpretation, issues over the French Revolution / Napoleonic Wars, these issues are not going away. They'll rebrand. The anti-federalists will rebrand themselves Democratic Republicans. It's kind of a seamless transition. What's the answer for question 1? Good job. What is a kestrel? Seconds of my life that aren't coming back. Yes, Rush-Bagot only demilitarized the Great Lakes. You are right. Elastic clause. Don't sweat that. Judiciary Act. What is Marshall trying to achieve? He's trying not to go to war with the president. So let's say in the John Marshall, when he sets up judicial review, it is a way for him to avoid having a fight with Thomas Jefferson because he avoids giving Marbury the seat. Okay. Elastic clause, it's just another name for the necessary and proper clause. All right. Treaty of Ghent, status quo antebellum. In other words, we're going to pretend the war never happened. And both Britain and the United States are merely going to get back to life as it was before the war. That is what antebellum means, before the war. Status quo antebellum. We're going to pretend the whole thing never happened. Fight-ish. Did Hamilton's financial plan lead to inflation? It was... Okay, so I don't know that Hamilton's financial plan either leads to inflation or fights inflation. The inflation was caused by the lack of government regulation on the printing of money. Once the Constitution is ratified, only the federal government can coin official government money, and that's going to help with the inflation problem. Hamilton's plan is more looking toward the economic growth of America. Remember that Hamilton sees a future America as a manufacturing and trading center. And so his plan is very much geared to help merchants, traders, manufacturers, and not so much your small-time farmer, which is part of the reason that Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans oppose it. Pinckney's Treaty, we said the right to use the Mississippi River. Why did the French seize American ships? Did they have some sort of form of impressment? It goes back to the British Orders in Council and the Napoleonic Continental System. Both British and French are trying to blockade each other, and so when they see American ships traveling either to Britain or to France, they try to confiscate the cargoes. Thank you. Aw, you're sweet. What was the event in which the Fed decided on the separation party? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. We already talked right at the beginning, Continental System, British Orders in Council. I just said the British and French are trying to blockade each other. Okay. Watching Crash Course on the bus is a cheat code. Solid. No, you're good on necessary and proper. Do you think the government should only do what it absolutely is allowed to do in the Constitution, or do you think the government should have some wiggle room to do what needs to be done, what is proper? You're looking at strict versus loose. Why don't we watch Liberty Kids for a push? Knock yourself out. Non-Intercourse Act end. It ended with the War of 1812. Liberty Kids. But I thought he was a French general. Was America allied with the British during the Quasi-War? No. America is trying to stay neutral, and we are struggling with both the British and the French during the early 1800s because of their violations of our shipping on the high seas. Does the Bill of Rights talk about the people's rights or what the government can't do? Little column A, little column B. Constitution is chock full of all the things the government can do. The Bill of Rights, first 9 amendments of the Constitution, put limits on the government's power. When did the feds compromise for the Republicans? I think that Constitutional Convention is full of compromises. Great Compromise, Three-Fifths Compromise, Slave Trade Compromise. It's all part of the compromise between the Federalists and, at least at that moment, they're called anti-Federalists. No one actually won the Quasi-War, right? Right. Was America BFFs with the British after Ghent? It's going to take some time, but it is the first moment where we are going to start having a comfortable relationship with each other. For about the next 100 years, the Brits and Americans will get closer and closer, and then, you know, when you hit the 20th century, BFFs. Yep. Anyone else see the fly in the room behind Mr. Ignani? Yes, it is there. It is annoying the jabbers out of me. Order in the chat, please. Were Jefferson's plans to improve education unsuccessful? Nobody wanted to pay for it. Nobody really felt a public school system was necessary, so we pretty much considered with the, or continued on with the Republican motherhood / apprentice system, right? If you want to learn a trade, if you want to learn how to be a doctor, if you want to learn how to be a lawyer, you go apprentice yourself. The drive for public education is going to continue, but it's going to be a while till we get it. There is no real treaty that ended the Quasi-War. Eventually, the French have bigger fish to fry, bigger problems, and so they will make their peace with the United States and stop seizing our ships. Why did the government create a whiskey tax? To pay bills. That's why. It's a great way for the government to make money. Okay, please stop spelling quasi with a Z. It's an S. Wait, when did the anti-federalists turn into the Democratic Republicans? Post-convention. Well, I think Jay's treaty, Cameron, got the British to respect the boundary of the United States after the Revolution. But remember the causes of the War of 1812. It's impressment, right, that the British are guilty of against American shipping. And it is also the British supplying Tecumseh's Confederacy with weapons and food and other goods. Those two things Americans see as directly at the hands of the British. Treaty of Ghent, status quo antebellum. What else? What role did deism play? It's one of those things that the Second Great Awakening is a backlash to. Yes, we talked, Cardi, about Louisiana Purchase. He doesn't end slavery in the territories because he knows it will lead to civil war and the country's not strong enough for it. We've already talked about Republican influence on education a couple of times. Main cause of impressment, the British don't have enough sailors. Let's see here. As at the end, made us look weak. What issues did the Constitutional Convention not talk about? Well, you will notice, Isha, that they do not talk about getting rid of slavery, mostly because the North knows that the South will walk. I wouldn't worry about issues the convention doesn't talk about. Make sure you know the issues the convention does talk about. Okay. Any specific event caused the Second Great Awakening? No, I don't think so. I think there are some preachers that wander into America from England that are very enthusiastic about religion and a personal relationship with God. And so when they start preaching, there does seem to be this kind of upswell of enthusiasm for religion and a backlash against the pure reason and logic of the Enlightenment. But no, I don't think there is a catalyst that causes it. Right? It's on the Hartford Convention. What do we have to know about the steamboat? Nothing. You're good. Steamboat, transportation faster. That they're done. It goes upstream and downstream. Two. Let's see here. Okay. Elias Whitney, that would be the guy who invented the cotton gin. Why did farmers support the Second Great Awakening? Because you don't have to be educated to listen to the emotion that is inside of you. That's why. Enlightenment thinking, you have to be literate. You have to have some logic and rational training behind you. But to feel emotion in your soul, anybody can do that. Just go to Twitter. What else? Yeah, Black Rifter, you good. I still don't understand how the Quasi-War happened. It's pretty simple. The British and French both are trying to win their war against each other, and American shipping is just getting caught in the way. Boom, done. Doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Let's see. What was the effect of Washington's farewell address? Well, he says no political parties, and we immediately form political parties. He also says avoid foreign entanglements, foreign alliances, and within a decade, we're fighting the War of 1812. So, I mean, he is giving advice to the young republic that we pretty much ignore in the short term. All right. If the slave trade compromise was made so the South didn't walk, what ensured they wouldn't walk 20 years later? Because the South agreed. They agreed to it. They agreed, probably figuring they could import enough slaves that it wouldn't matter 20 years down the road. I think that's as far as you need to take it. Did the masses consider Jefferson a hypocrite? Probably not. I mean, if you are Joe Farmer, then the Louisiana Territory is just more farmland. Do we need to know about Mercy Warren or Samuel Slater? They're really going to be major players in another unit, so no. Orders in Council, Continental System, basically the same thing in opposite directions. The British Orders in Council is against the French, and the Continental System is against the British. Yeah, Turnbull, impressive paintings, you bet. And Turnbull is really just an example of that Republican influence on American culture. In this case, it's art. Right? How did Hamilton convince Jefferson to follow with his debt plan? Well, I think Hamilton presents it as a member of the cabinet, and Jefferson opposes it, but Washington approves, and so do the Federalists in Congress. Jefferson doesn't like it because it will improve the interests of the merchant class and the trading class, but it doesn't do anything for the average Joe farmer. So after the Embargo Act was lifted, did the French and British stop randomly kidnapping sailors? Not really. The Embargo Act was 1808, I believe. Madison's going to replace it with the Non-Intercourse Act to maybe kickstart the American economy, which had fallen into a big depression. And to be honest with you, by the Chesapeake Leopard affair, the French Navy is at the bottom of the ocean. And so really after about 1805, it is the French doing all the impressment. Purpose of the Federalist Papers: to convince people worried, uneasy, unsure about the Constitution, how it was safe, how it would prevent tyranny, how factions would prevent the mob from running the country, and why it needed to be ratified. The Federalist Papers are really just trying to convince people that this government was the one to ratify. William Henry Harrison crushes Tecumseh's Confederacy at the Battle of the Thames. Okay. The Constitution does establish a federal court system. Judiciary Act, I believe, of 1789 sets up the actual structure of it, but I would not sweat that. Okay. Jay's Treaty. Tried to get the British off the frontier and get them to honor the Treaty of Paris from 1783 that defined America's boundaries at the Great Lakes in the north, the Atlantic Ocean on the east, the Mississippi River in the west, and the Gulf of Mexico in the south. Yeah, you're splitting hairs now with Continental System, Berlin, Milan decrees. The Continental System is the French attempt to blockade Britain. Don't take it any further than that. You get bogged down in the weeds. Citizen Genet, I think, leads us to the Alien and Sedition Acts a few years down the road. Pinckney's Treaty is, actually look up Pinckney's Treaty. Pinckney's Treaty is granting the Americans the right to use the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans from the Spanish. Virginia and Kentucky resolves. You know, they don't have a ton of importance. They are the result of the Alien and Sedition Act. In this particular unit, the Virginia and Kentucky resolves are written by Madison and Jefferson to proclaim that the states are actually superior because they ratified the Constitution and they can nullify federal law if it would hurt the interests of the state. In Unit 3, they are not going to lead to anything. They are Jefferson and Madison's rebuttal to the Alien and Sedition Act, but nothing much happens. Later on down the road, in another unit, they will come back out with far greater significance. Yes, Citizen Genet is to rile up the Americans. You got it. Did the economic depression caused by the Embargo Act result in a lot of people switching to the Federalist Party? I don't think so. Jefferson is a reasonably popular president because of his support for the small-time independent farmer. I would also think that during a depression, your small farmer can simply grow food and kind of suck it up greater than a merchant or trader could. So while it hurts your small-time Jeffersonian Republican, it probably hurts the Federalists a lot more. Guys, look up Citizen Genet. We've talked about it a couple of times. Anything specific we should know about the Second Great Awakening? It happens. It's an opportunity for women. Did the Alien and Sedition Acts cause the Virginia Kentucky resolves? Yes, you got it. George Washington is overrated. So are you, Joe. Goodbye. Were the merchants mostly Federalist? I think most of your merchants and traders are Federalists, yeah, especially when you consider that New England is the kind of ground zero for the Federalist Party, and Boston being the center of American shipping, part of it. Revolution of 1800, we talked about earlier. Peaceful transition of power between the Federalist John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican. Let's see here. Just talked about Virginia, Kentucky resolves. Good work. Concept of nullification. Outstanding. Very nice. Kestrel's a bird. There you go. Judiciary Act was the law that John Adams used to sign all the midnight appointments, and it is the law that is declared unconstitutional when John Marshall fires up the concept of judicial review. Okay, Charlotte, I'll buy that. It's an opportunity for women to step outside the home and work in something larger. Could you leave timestamps, Mr. Ignati? Good Lord, man. I'm answering questions as fast as possible. I have no timestamps for you. I got nothing. Come on, Gabriel, you're good. You're going to be fine. LOL is right. Tecumseh would like to push the Americans back east of the Appalachian Mountains. Oh, Gabriel, don't say sorry. You're fine. Tecumseh would love to push white people back east of the Appalachian Mountains, but good luck with that. How did Washington's plan regarding the Native Indians differ from Jefferson? Wow. Okay. So Jefferson says that the Indians have to give up all claim to land east of the Mississippi River. And that's different because if you remember, Washington was, we're gonna set up Indian lands and protect them, and maybe someday down the road they become states. But no, Jefferson's plan, the Indians would have to give up all claims to their land. Oh, Cameron Lee, it is too late to drop out of the class, but you're gonna be all right. Midnight appointments. John Adams leads to Marbury versus Madison. British Order in Council. The British are trying to blockade Napoleon's France. There you go. Good. Nice work, Reagan. Nice work. You guys don't need me at all. You're good. You're in good shape. We've got about 8 minutes. Then we'll let you get back to your freaking out. There are a couple of different judiciary acts. There are. But I would not get bogged down. Judiciary Act 1789, Judiciary Act 1801. I would not. How did the Order of Council affect America if all it did was block the French? Because the British and French are trying to blockade each other, and that means stopping American ships who are trying to trade. Don't worry about Unitarianism or Universalism. Don't do it. Don't do it. Is Lewis and Clark significant? Only that Jefferson sends them to explore the new Louisiana territory. All right. You're just not helping. What was the Great Compromise? Gabriel, this is New Jersey plan versus Virginia plan. Are we going to have representation based on equality or representation based on population? And the answer is Hartford Convention. We do Panic of 1819 later on down the road, man. Hartford Convention, death of the Federalist Party. Okay. I think the Napoleonic Wars are an extension of the French Revolution, and it really just leads to all sorts of foreign policy problems for the young American Republic as it tries to trade with the rest of the world. Okay, Napoleonic Wars are why we get impressment, and the Quasi-War, and the XYZ affair, and the Chesapeake Leopard affair, and all that jazz. Trade imbalances, yeah. Right after the Revolutionary War, the British start flooding America with low-cost manufactured goods, makes it really hard for American businesses to compete because they can't produce goods that cheaply. Situation screams for an American tariff that would make British goods more expensive, but thanks to the Articles of Confederation, we can't pass a tariff. And that's what we mean by trade imbalance. Karan, I bet you know the answer to this already. Virginia plan was based on population. New Jersey plan was based on equal representation. And so we combine them in the Great Compromise to get the House of Representatives, which is based on population, and the Senate, which is based on equality. Was public schooling ever established? Much, much later than Unit 3. Oh, stop saying sorry. You're fine, but I bet you did know the answer to that. Barbary pirates, yar. They make it's a hassle for Thomas Jefferson. He's got to send the Navy over there because they keep holding our ships and people for ransom. Too much info to handle. Not a chance. You got this. What was the event that led to the ratification of the Constitution? All the compromises at the Constitutional Convention. Right? Aaron Burr is not really someone we talk about with the Revolution of 1800. Aaron Burr really only popped up in our conversation in the Burr Conspiracy. I would not worry about Burr as a political operative vis-a-vis Thomas Jefferson. Are there any good review tests or quizzes for APUSH? You might try your online textbook. Yep, the McGraw-Hill Student Connect might have some online questions for you. Gabriel's got a good Quizlet. Yes, share it with him, please, Gabriel. Jefferson doesn't really make a navy. He uses the navy that John Adams created. Yes, Chesapeake Leopard leads the Embargo Act. Good job, Sampson. Nice. Electoral College is part of the articles in the Constitution. Okay. If it isn't good, I'm suing. Brother, I'm a public school teacher. I have nothing for you to take. You can have all my debt. How's that? Call you Alexander Hamilton. Which president was the chill one? I'm going to dignify that. Don't worry about the rowboat thing. Please stop with the rowboats. I'll take your debt. You can have it. Who was the president? It's William Henry Harrison. It's like in a different unit. Stick to the terms. You're all over the place. Yeah. Cameron, I'm going to come find you tomorrow. We need to talk. Yes, yeah. I'll get right on that right now. Hi, Mrs. Yu. You are not going to fail this test. Have a little bit of faith in yourself. There's no square wheels that I remember. Dilution of power, checks and balances, man. Right? You've got the president who's commander in chief of the army and the Congress that can only the Congress can declare war. You've got the way the House and the Senate are elected at different times. You've got the Supreme Court later on using judicial review. You've got the Senate approving presidential appointments to the judiciary and the cabinet. You've got the House in charge of tax bills. That's all dilution of power. Okay. Transportation innovations, they're going to be more important later on, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, turnpike, roads for profit, right? People are trying to profit off of roads. Steamboat lets us go both up and down the river. But that's about it, man. Don't stress too much on the transportation bit. What is this APUSH TikTok that you speak of? Could we go over what the national government and state government could do to compare to each other? Here's what I'm going to tell you. The national government is in charge of defense. The national government is in charge of treaty making. The national government is in charge of currency. The national government is in charge of international trade. Anything not directly spelled out for the national government goes to the state governments. There you go. Why was the woman considered the spiritual head of the family? Why not? I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry. Only that she traditionally is. Keep the house, raise the kids, spiritual head of the family. Because men didn't do crap. That's sexist. What are all the treaties we need to go about? Check your terms. Yes, the Whiskey Rebellion would be an outstanding example of the strengths of the Constitution. Nashi, if the treaty's on the terms, you need it. If the treaty's not on the terms, you won't. I promise. Can I go for another hour? I got dishes to wash. Checks and balances. What exactly when the Constitution was ratified? Yes, thank you. I do have a life. Yes. 10 more minutes. Sorry, Brother Bear. I got to sign off. Listen, folks, you're going to be all right. Do the best you can tonight. Stick with the terms and the outlines. Make sure that you get a good night's sleep. Make sure you eat breakfast. Make sure you are ready to roll. Put your game face on. You're going to do fine. Good night, everybody.